Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, even though it is getting a bit old now, it's still one of only a few plug-in hybrid options in the small SUV class. It's kind of like the ASX, except it's available with plug-in power, and it's got a bit more of a futuristic design theme going on. Speaking of the design, it's one element that I don't really like. I know it's just a personal thing, and design is always subjective. It just, to me, kind of looks like a random piece of cheese or a cow trying to stand on a stool. It's just all top heavy and narrow down the bottom with a wheelbase that's, I don't know, just kind of looks a bit awkward. I think part of the problem is when they first released the first generation Eclipse Cross, they had this futuristic split tailgate whereby it had a beam through the middle and a separate window. And it was, yeah, it's pretty futuristic and pretty cool, but I think a lot of people complained about that. So they had to convert it to a more conventional shape. And I think that's, in that process, I think it's just lost a bit of its touch. It is definitely starting to look a little bit dated now as well. Lots of chrome around the front end. The black highlights in the grille and everything for this top spec Exceed model do try to add some sportiness. And then up the top, we've got black roof rails and twin glass sunroof panels. Kind of makes it look like it's got a black roof, contrast roof for that sporty look. The most interesting part though is the powertrain, plug-in hybrid. So this is different to a normal hybrid. You can plug this in at home and drive it under electric power alone. The official range is 55 kilometers, although it's really about 40 to 45 kilometers in the real world. But that means you could actually drive this to work every day without using petrol power at all. There's modes in there where you can save the battery level or charge the battery as well using the petrol engine, although it does chew the petrol quite a bit. The fuel gauge just drops down very quickly to try and charge that battery. I'm not sure where those modes would come in handy in real world use, like long-term use. If I own this, I don't know when I would ever use that, but it was handy for me because I can charge the battery at home, hold it at full charge or save, the button says, and then I can do the performance test, release the full power with a battery at near full. But in the real world, yeah, I don't know where you'd use that. The good thing about it though is you've got the option to play around with that sort of stuff, which I think is interesting. And electric power is good in the city, so it's very efficient when you're just zipping around in the city at low speeds. If you went on a big road trip or something like that, you could leave it in hybrid mode and save the battery for when you get to the cities and then drive around on electric power. It might save some fuel, but you'd have to really figure out the best sort of combination. I guess that's a level of engagement and fun if you wanted to play around with that. Now Mitsubishi doesn't offer a combined power output figure for this system, but the 2.4 petrol engine produces 94 kilowatts, and then the front electric motor produces 60 kilowatts and 137 newton meters, with the rear electric motor producing 70 kilowatts and 195 newton meters. So if you combine those figures together, you've actually got a fair bit of power and torque, and it's actually pretty quick. As you'll see in the performance test coming up, for this class, it's not too bad, the acceleration 0 to 100. In the front, you've got surprisingly comfortable and supportive seats. These side bolsters really stick out, and the leather is really soft as well. For this style of vehicle anyway, you just don't expect it to be this sort of comfortable and luxurious even. But yeah, looking around the dash, it's starting to age quite a bit. You've got lots of piano black plastic, which is already showing signs of wear and tear and little scratches and so on. I just wiped it down before. It gets covered in dust and grubby prints and stuff very, very quickly. Just start it up. The engine doesn't actually turn on, the petrol engine. Lots of beeps and bongs. So it's telling me that I've started the car. Now it's telling me the door's open or something. I really like this gauge on the side here, mechanical gauge, but it just gives you a very clear view of what's going on. So when you're going down hills or hitting the brakes, it'll go into the charge section. That's all EV where it says. And then this side over here is when the petrol engine engages. And then in the middle there, you can see I'm chewing 6.5 litres per 100 kilometres, which is not all that great for a hybrid. The Toyota hybrids, like the Corolla Cross, the official rating is 4.4, I think. And for that, you're getting decent performance. And I've achieved around 4.5, 4.6 or something like that in the real world. So for this to offer 6.5 in the real world, and it looked pretty much like that too before performance testing. So it's not just that I've done performance testing that it's gone up. But yeah, it's okay. You've got that ability to drive on electric power, so you have to include that. If you toggle through the different display modes, there you can see clearly how much range you've got for both power sources, trip information, and that's about it. There's no digital speedo, and a little power display distribution to show you what's going on. The official fuel consumption rating is 1.9, but plug-in hybrids kind of get a cheat pass with the test because they only run for about 20 minutes. You can look up all this stuff. It's readily available. I can't remember, but it's about 20 minutes, certain amount of kilometers. So when you get into this, or when they test this, it's got a full battery, 55 kilometers range, or whatever, 50, 45 kilometers range. A lot of that is driving on electric power. So that's why the official rating of plug-in hybrids is usually very, very low. So 1.9. You'd be lucky to get that in day-to-day use after extended, long-term ownership. Decent amount of storage around the center console. You've got a tray at the front there, twin cup holders, a nice big center console box, bottle holders in the doors. There goes the beeps again. And then in the back, yeah, I think this is one of the most spacious SUVs of its class. I'll just open the windows, get some light in there. Yeah, this is one of the most spacious SUVs in its class. Heaps of legroom. The floor is almost flat. That rear of that console does stick out a little bit, but it's not too bad. It doesn't have climate vents in the back though, unfortunately. I mean, it does down below under the seat there, but not traditional ones up here where you probably want the air conditioning to flow on a hot day. You don't, want it spraying down onto your feet. You want it to be nice and fresh right in your face. But you do have seat heating, which is unusual, and twin charging ports. A little rear sunroof, which is a bit of fun. If you've got kids or something, you can't actually open it, which is probably a good thing for the kids as well. And I kind of sit a bit perched up compared with the front. So you're going to have a good, I can't stand that beeping. And the view is actually pretty good. You sit quite high in the back, definitely higher than the front. And that is going to help with, any sort of car sickness and so on, because you get a good view outside. The sill panel is pretty low. I'm about the height of a 5-year-old, so you're getting a pretty good view. There's my eyesight there. They can see straight out the window very easily. And then in the back, we've got a power tailgate with 359 litres. It's not bad for capacity compared with some rivals, but it's not at the top of the class. You've got pockets on the sides, and even a power socket in the back here, 220 volt household socket. Under the floor, you've got some extra storage for the charging cables. All right, let's go for a quick drive and then we'll get stuck into the performance testing. It's surprisingly relaxing and almost luxurious to drive this, probably because it is so quiet. Obviously, when you're in EV mode like it is now, it's not making any sound at all. But even when the petrol engine does kick in, you're kind of waiting for a noise to happen or some sort of feeling in the back, but it's completely seamless. Like, I'll just slow down and give it some power to cause the engine to kick in. It's like the gauge switches across to petrol power, and yeah, you're just waiting for this noise or some sort of jolt, but it's, yeah, you don't even feel anything at all. And even when the engine is going, it's quiet. It's like it's very distant from the cabin. In terms of the overall environment in here, it just feels and looks a bit old. Like, look at this touchscreen there. The graphics are very basic. It just seems like it's from kind of 10 years ago. I actually don't mind the grid layout, very simple. I don't like the way it beeps every time you hit anything. You can probably turn that off in the settings. But yeah, it's very simple. You don't have to worry about, being overwhelmed by some massive screen and all these different options. Across the dash, you've got soft touch materials. It's kind of like a rubbery material, at least at eyesight level. Lower down, it's scratchy plastic, but that's fine. That's pretty standard. There is a bit of wind noise around that mirror there, but overall, it's definitely at the standard of this class in terms of refinement, driving refinement. Now, the handling it's a funny one. It's very soft suspension, so it absorbs country roads very, very well. It just feels a little bit flimsy and a bit too soft if you like any sort of sporty driving. And the steering is kind of, it's got nothing in the center, but then suddenly it does come on pretty quickly. So I did a bit of a slalom test down the private road, and it kind of catches up with itself. It's very hard to explain, but it just doesn't feel super super precise. And I'm just talking in this class as well. I'm not trying to compare it to a Porsche 911 or something. I'm saying if you drive some of the other ones, like a Mazda CX-30 or something, that's just a bit more precise, it's a bit more nice, a bit nicer to drive along a winding road. On the other hand though, if you do live in the country and you're encountering rough roads like this quite often, then you'll like the suspension setup in this, because it just catches all those bumps, seems like it's got a lot of wheel travel, and the tyres aren't overly low profile either, so they absorb some of the impacts as well. In terms of performance, I'll just slow right down, give it full power, 40 kilometers an hour. So even when the engine's absolutely screaming its head off, you can hardly hear it. But yeah, those electric motors provide instant response, and although you probably can't, well, you won't be able to feel it on camera, but there is a good instant shove that you experience. The top end surge is kind of deceiving because the engine is screaming, although mildly and kind of in the distance, you don't really hear it. You feel like, oh, this is not going that well. But then you look at the speedo and it's climbing speed pretty quickly because of those electric motors just giving that top end pulse. Overall, I think this deserves a position in the market as a kind of old school setup in terms of the touchscreen and all that, but it's got a new school, if you like, powertrain. So even if you're thinking about going to an EV, but you're not quite ready yet, you can buy something like this, plug-in hybrid power, experience EV-like qualities, but you still have the petrol engine to back you up. All right, let's do the performance test now with the V-Box and see what it goes like.